Big Shanty, Georgia, April 12th, 1862. Conductor William A. Fuller checks his engine, the General, before taking his break during the train's breakfast stop. And as he walks into the hotel for a quick bite, he thinks maybe he should alert someone about the 20 men who'd gotten on at the last stop. They were furtive and tense, probably Confederate deserters. But before he can do that or spoon up some eggs, he hears something strange. The huffing of his beloved machine. Outside, the General has decoupled from its passenger cars and is pulling away. And aboard, he sees the suspicious men. Not deserters, train robbers! He then pursues the shortened train on foot, trying his hardest to catch his engine, falling behind as he shouts for help from passersby. But listen all y'all, this is no robbery. It's sabotage! Those are train noises. Today's historical heist is made possible by our creator-owned and operated streaming service, Nebula, where you can get access to our next series 2 whole weeks early and ad-free. Aboard the General, James J. Andrews is watching William Fuller drop further and further behind. They've done it! After all of the planning, all of the preparation, they're heading north on a hijacked Confederate train. Now, Andrews is not a soldier. In fact, exactly what he is remains a subject of conjecture to this day. He'd held a string of odd jobs over the course of his life, including smuggling medicine across the Union blockade, but he'd come to the attention of the Union Army for his services as a scout and spy. And he'd pitched them on an audacious sabotage operation. He and a strike team would infiltrate into enemy territory, capture a locomotive, and run it northward, destroying railways, bridges, and telegraph lines behind them. This would help isolate Confederate forces in Tennessee from the rest of the rebel states and prepare the ground for the Union to move in and capture the major railway junction at Chattanooga. To the Union generals, now working with depleted forces as combat moved west, it was worth a shot. But Andrews' first raid was called off after they'd reached the target, only to find that the train's engineer, a secret Union sympathizer, had been transferred. They got back safely, but the 8 raiders who'd accompanied him weren't keen to go again, because if found, they would be hanged as spies, so he appealed to 3 regiments of Ohio troops for volunteers. My name is James J. Andrews, and I'm putting together a special team. I need me 20 soldiers. 20 railroad-loving soldiers. We're going to be sneaking into Georgia dressed as civilians. And we're going to be doing one thing, and one thing only. Stealing trains. And I want my trains. Okay, of course not so Tarantino, but you get the picture. And now, Andrews had his train. In fact, the operation had gone swimmingly. 20 of the 24 raiders actually made it onto the train. 2 had been caught, assumed to be deserters and pressed into a Confederate artillery regiment, while 2 others had gotten to the hotel where the team met, but then overslept and missed the train, which is a vibe I can personally relate with. But the main force had remained undetected, and were now heading north, which is ironically when things went south. See, they couldn't exactly sneak south while carrying a bunch of equipment and gunpowder, so they didn't have any actual tools to sabotage the rails. Andrews managed to borrow a crowbar during one of the train's scheduled stops, but that didn't do much. Next, they'd collected railroad ties as firewood to burn any bridges that they'd crossed, but it had been raining for days, so nothing would light. The best they could do was cut telegraph cables, mostly by hooking the things as they passed and using the momentum of the train to pull them down. Also, people in the towns they passed were getting suspicious. See, back then, rail employees were well known in the towns they passed through, sort of like your local mail carriers. It was always the same crew. So then when it was suddenly a bunch of new guys, that's a little weird. They also kept getting snarled in traffic. Of course, the raiders knew that the general's route involved scheduled stops to let other trains pass, but the war had meant a lot of delayed trains and rerouting, meaning that the waits stretched longer than usual. Hard to have a car chase in traffic, you know? And make no mistake, it was a chase, because their biggest problem was that they were being followed. By who, you ask? Who exactly was this small figure in the distance disappearing when they stoked the engine and then reappearing when they stopped? William Fuller. Yeah, the determined conductor apparently never skipped leg day because he was doggedly still following them on foot after miles. Granted, a fairly normal thing for rail employees to do, for they often had to run ahead of or behind trains. At least he was running at first, because soon Andrews saw a vehicle coming around the bend. It was Fuller, but now he'd found a handcar, and he was pumping his way towards his beloved machine. Still, they left him behind, until an old train engine started checking up behind them because Fuller had upgraded again. Now their train was being chased by another train. Worse still, an interchange switch operator, suspicious, refused to change the tracks to let the general head north. When Andrews did it himself, well, it was clear they weren't just some new rail crew. That'd be like going into the tower at an airport and clearing a plane for takeoff when it wasn't its turn. So the game was up. The Confederates were alerted, and all they could do was run. Then there was a tense moment when another locomotive approached them from the opposite direction. A powerful engine, the Texas, presumably carrying soldiers. Andrews and his crew held their breath, and it went past. Whew! That was close. Wait, nope. A minute later, it appeared again behind them. Rather than turning around, it was simply now running in reverse. And who was on the caboose? Fuller. The raiders began throwing railroad ties out the back, hoping to stop the engine. Fuller's men simply knocked them aside with bars. Then Andrews' crew decoupled one boxcar after another, hoping to cause a collision with the Texas. But get this, with Fuller's train running in reverse, he could just hook them up to his train and make it bigger. And when they sighted the smoke of another train ahead, Andrews knew it was time to bug out. They scattered into the woods, hoping a few of them would make it, but there were Confederate units mustering all over the countryside, and the search parties were just too big. Every raider was caught. Even the two who'd missed the train because a hotel porter hadn't woken them up on time. Andrews managed to escape from prison, but was recaptured the same day. Then, after a trial that only lasted hours, he was hanged as a spy, strangling rather than having his neck broken because he was so tall that his feet hit the ground when he was dropped. Several others were executed before the South seemed to lose their stomach for it. After all, despite the mayhem, little damage was done and no one was actually killed, so the prospect of 22 executions started to look a little disproportionate. The rest of the raiders, miraculously, eventually made it back alive. The two that were pressed into service later deserted and made it back to Union lines. 8 of those held as prisoners of war escaped, breaking up into pairs. 6 made their way north, while 2, sort of brilliantly, went south instead. Making it to Florida, they got their hands on a boat and rowed out to a U.S. naval vessel blockading the port. Then the remaining 6 were traded in a prisoner exchange later in the war. And they returned to all find themselves lauded as heroes, both in newspapers and in a special new way. Sensing the war weariness of the country, in 1862, the War Department had decided to raise morale by creating a medal for bravery, much as the British Empire had done 6 years before with the Victoria Cross. Yet, by the time the raiders arrived back in the prisoner exchange in March of 1863, it had not yet been awarded. So on March 25th, 7 of the raiders found themselves in the office of Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, receiving their nation's highest, and at the time, only award for valor in combat. Private Jacob Parrott, who'd been beaten as a prisoner, was the first. And it's really interesting to note how these awards set the mold for what the Medal of Honor would become. The recipients were all military, the civilians, including Andrews, did not receive it, and after the presentation, they met Lincoln at the White House, who personally thanked them, a ritual which continues to this day. Over the next several years, more raiders would get the award, helping set the precedent that it could be awarded posthumously. And the fact that this was a failed operation that killed 0 enemy soldiers hammered home that this was not an award for victory or inflicting violence, but rather doing one's duty under extreme danger. Today, both locomotives, the General and the Texas, reside in museums, and the executed raiders are buried together near a monument to the raid. The event has been the subject of 2 films, including a silent Buster Keaton comedy, The General, considered a treasure of early Hollywood. Seriously, if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's pretty good. Andrews failed to capture Chattanooga, but his raid did capture our imaginations ever since. And imagination is a hell of a drug. Like, could you imagine, say, I don't know, a place where hundreds of your favorite creators not only post their videos early and ad-free, but also were constantly making new, big concept originals you can't see anywhere else? Wait a minute, that place exists! It's no secret by now that we are super proud of Nebula, a streaming platform that's run by all of us creators. We put every one of our videos up there early and ad-free, which makes it the perfect place to binge our hundreds of back catalog episodes. Plus, you can even see the first episode of our next extra history series on Hypatia of Alexandria right now 2 whole weeks earlier than on YouTube. Also, I do want to mention that Nebula just completed a huge update, making it easier than ever before to find the content you want via their new selections tabs. Oh look, that is a lot of history just waiting to be watched. Then of course you have all of the top tier original and exclusive content on Nebula that you can't see anywhere else, like Real Life Lore's Modern Conflicts episode on the Ukrainian counteroffensive, Mary Spender's documentary The Rise and Fall of Led Zeppelin. And coming this summer, the brand new show from the creators of Jetlag that I am in, called The Getaway. I am so extremely pumped for this. It was announced in Variety, it is massive, and I just cannot wait for you to see it when it drops. It's awesome. Now, you can get all of this Nebula goodness at a deep discount when you head to nebula.tv/extrahistory. The price is just $2.50 a month annually, or $5 month to month. Or, right now Nebula is offering lifetime memberships that will last as long as you and Nebula both exist for $300. Yeah, no tricks, no gimmicks, one payment, and then get Nebula access forever. And actually, real talk, those lifetime subs are a great way for us to remain independent while also raising capital for all of the amazing and creator-owned projects Nebula is greenlighting. It really is a win-win. Again, that is nebula.tv/extrahistory, or else you won't get the discount or be supporting our channel. So sign up for Nebula here or in the description, or stay on the YouTube machine and check out another of our videos here. Probably has ads though. Say, did you hear the one about Kuya Koi, Joseph Blame, Izzy Coin, Ilkner, Dominic Valenciana, Arclight Games, Angelo Valenciana, and Ahmed Ziad Turk being legendary patrons? Yeah, turns out they're the best.